Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to a man whose great learning and veneration for the truth is only exceeded by his high moral character and majestic presence. Oh, I, of course, refer in these vague general terms to myself. I find introductions unnecessary, but if it is the custom to have them, well, I'd prefer to do the act myself. I was born modest, but it wore off. Now, I was once presented to an audience by a lawyer, kept his hands in his pockets, and he introduced me as Mark Twain, a humorist, a very funny fellow, and a rare creature indeed. Well, I was knocked speechless by this complimentary thunderbolt. I'd never in my life heard a compliment so beautifully phrased or so well deserved. But we had a much rarer creature in our midst than a humorist who was very funny. We had a lawyer who kept his hands in his own pockets. Well, you know, I love compliments. We all do. Humorists, burglars, congressmen, all of us in the trade. And if you can't get one any other way, why then pay yourself one. I do it all the time. I can do it now. I can say that there are currently two men who are most famous. One is Rudyard Kipling, and the other is myself. Between us, we cover all knowledge. Kipling knows all that there is to know, and I know the rest. Yeah, you know, I hate to have myself mentioned as one of the great authors because, well, they have such a sad habit of dying out. Chaucer is dead. Spencer is dead. So is Milton, and so is Shakespeare. Well, and I'm not feeling very well myself. People often ask me about, well, why I wear this white suit. Well, I've been around a good deal, and I have mixed with royalty and savages and, well, common ordinary people. And the one thing that has always struck me is that clothes makes the man. Naked people have very little or no influence in society. Yeah, when I was a boy, there was but one permanent ambition. Amongst my comrades in our little village on the west bank of the Mississippi, and that was to be a steamboatman. We had transient ambitions of other sorts, but they were merely transient. Why, when a circus came and went in our town, why, then we were all burning to be clowns. Then when the first Negro minstrel shows came to our section, why, then we all suffered to try that kind of life. Now and then, we thought that, well, if we live long enough and we're good, God may permit us to be pirates. Well, these ambitions faded out over time, but the ambition to be a steamboatman always remained. Boy after boy managed to get on the river, and by I ran away too. And I vowed I would not come back again until I returned as a pilot and could return in glory. So I apprenticed to a Mr. Bixby on the Paul James, and he agreed to teach me the Mississippi River from New Orleans to St. Louis for $500 payable out of my first wages after graduation. So I began this small enterprise of learning 1,200 to 1,300 miles of the great Mississippi River with all the easy confidence of my young time of life. If I had really known what I was going to require my faculties, I would have never had the courage to begin. Well, now, if I seem to have fond memories of my days upon the river, well, that's no surprising thing. I love that profession far more than any other that I have followed since, and I took a measureless pride in it. And for this reason, a riverboat pilot in those days was the only truly unfettered and free human being that was alive on the face of the earth. I was in the pilot house. Oh, I was so far above the water and I seemed to be perched on a mountain. Oh, it was a sumptuous glass temple which gave a princely view of the Mississippi, the majestic, the magnificent Mississippi as it rolled its mile-wide course shining in the sun. On the 4 o'clock watch mornings, I watched the summer sunrise on the river. Oh, that was enchanting. First, as the eloquence of silence, as a deep hush broods over everywhere. And there's the haunting feeling of loneliness and isolation and remoteness from the hurry and bustle of the world. And then when the dawn stealthily creeps in and the solid wall of black forest softens into gray and little spectral wreaths of white mist come off the water. Oh, the water is glass smooth. There's not the breath of wind nor the stir of a leaf. Then suddenly, a bird pops up, and then followed by another one, and that's followed by a joyous riot of music. Now you see none of the birds. You seem to be moving within an atmosphere of song itself. And then when the light gets a little brighter, why, then you see one of the fairest and softest pictures imaginable. The water is glass smooth, like a mirror, reflecting the foliage, and the curved shoreline and the receding capes are all pictured in it. And it was all beautiful. But when the sun gets well up and it powders a little pink here and some gold sprinkled yonder, and a purple haze will yield the best effect, why then you've grant you that you have seen something worth remembering. I had hoped to follow the river all my days and die at the wheel when my mission was complete. But by and by the war came and commerce on the river ceased, and my occupation was gone. So I joined the Confederate Army, and I learned that my great talent as a soldier was learning how to retreat. So after a couple of weeks, I left, deserted, and the Confederacy fell. So I went out west on the overland stage to make my fortune in the silver lands of the Nevada Territory. Now, I eventually located in Virginia City, which was a marvelous place for a man to lose his religion if he hadn't already lost it on the way there. And I was looking around for a job, but I was very particular about the kind of job I wanted. I didn't want to work. Yeah. Now, so I became a newspaper reporter. Oh, I hated to do it, but I couldn't find honest employment. Now, I've often had to serve time that way. By the time I was putting together my first book, I did a stretch in Washington as a newspaper correspondent, where I would go down to Congress at grand old benevolent National Asylum for the Helpless and report on the inmates there. Oh, it was very entertaining. I mean, I've never seen a body of men with tongues so handy and information so uncertain. Why, those men could talk for a whole day without getting rid of an idea. Well, if one of those men was present when the deity was about to pronounce, "Let there be light," we never would have gotten it. Well, then, I'd often go to San Francisco on holiday, and, well, it wasn't exactly a holiday. I still had to send a story or two back to Virginia City. But on this occasion, I went down to report on the Pioneers' Ball, which was a social event of the season. See, I knew if I reported on the female fashions on display at this ball, it would be of great interest to my society friends in the mining camps. So I arrived in San Francisco, and I had a terrible cold. And the lady at the hotel recommended that I drink a quart of whiskey every 24 hours. And a friend of mine, well, he recommended the exact same thing. That made half a gallon. Well, I did. The cold died and I lived. Oh, I've been drunk before, but that one was a masterpiece. Well, long about 2 o'clock in the morning, so, because I went to bed early that night, had a terrible nightmare. I dreamt I was being baptized. So, around 2 o'clock, I had a WC call. So I got up in the dark and went out into the hallway with just my nightshirt and no candle, when it occurred to me, there's no WC on my floor. Well, the hallway was pitch dark, so, well, I groped along on up to the WC on the next floor, and when I was finished there, then I went upstairs, returning to my room, on my way to where I thought my room was, and when I suddenly remembered that I had gone upstairs when I should have gone down, and now I don't know what floor I'm on. My mind left me. I was lost. My mind began to wander, and I didn't know where I was. And it was then when my mind left me completely. Now then, a man can't stand in a dark hallway at 2 o'clock in the morning with just his nightshirt looking like an envelope with no address on it. Now, he can't do that and be content. He has to go somewhere. So I groped my way on up to a couple of floors, lighting the way with profanity as I went. Now, you see, I couldn't go down to the ground floor and start over to get back to my room, well, because there was the Pioneer Ball going on down there. A whole ballroom full of young ladies is a very dangerous place to be in, clothed as I was and not in my right mind. Oh, well, pretty soon those gals started coming on up and going to bed. Well, I didn't know if I was on the WC floor or not. So I scampered into the nearest doorway, hoping and praying that it was it. It was. Oh, I stood there in that humble shelter, happy as a martyr when the fire don't burn. And I thought, oh, I'd stay there all the rest of my days, safe from life's dangers and travails. A few ladies tried to gain admittance, but I was not receiving, Thursdays being my day. Well, after a while, the house got dark and quiet, and so I made my way on back downstairs to the ground floor and retraced my steps up to my room. And I got into my room. Well, my temper lit a fire, and in the midst of this explosion, a female voice behind me piped up and said, "When you're done with your prayers, I'd like to know what you're doing in my room." You know, there really ought to be a room in every house to curse in. I mean, that's a dangerous emotion to keep stored up like that. Now, I've always had the notion that under certain dire and trying circumstances, profanity provides a relief that's denied even to prayer. I've always said that if I can't curse in heaven, I will not go. Well, they probably wouldn't let me in anyway, so my friends tell me. Oh, I once remarked to my preacher, Joe Twitchell, that I thought it'd be cremated. And he just kind of looked at me and said, "Oh, I wouldn't worry about that if I had your chances." Now then, man is the most interesting jackass there is. It's his idea, you see, that the deity sits up nights to admire him. He's the creator's pet. And you may wonder why. Well, it's because of his intellect. Man is the reasoning animal. Such is the claim, although I do believe it is open to dispute. Now, take, for example, an experiment I did now. I took a dog and a cat, and I taught them to be friends. And I put them in a cage. And I introduced a rabbit. Well, in an hour they were friends. So, I introduced a fox, a goose, a squirrel, some doves, a kangaroo, and a monkey. Well, they all lived together in peace. Well, then I took an Irish Catholic and I put him in a cage. And after a while, when he seemed tamed, well, I added in a Presbyterian. And then a Turk from Constantinople, a Methodist from the wilds of Arkansas, a Buddhist from China, and finally a Salvation Army colonel. Well, when I came back an hour later, there wasn't a specimen left alive. Seems that this reasoning animals had disagreed upon a theological detail and had taken the matter up to a higher court. Well, that's because, you see, man is also the religious animal. He's the only one that's got the true religion, several of them. He loves his neighbor as himself and cuts his throat if his theology isn't straight. He's made a graveyard of the globe, trying his honest best to smooth his brother's path to happiness and heaven. Now, the animals, they don't have a religion, you know. Gonna be left out in the hereafter. That hardly seems fair. Man is also the only animal that blushes or needs to. You have to remember that man was made at the end of the week's work. Yeah. Well, now it's almost time to go. Now, I came in 1835 on Halley's Comet, and it's coming back again pretty soon. And I expect to go out with it. Be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet. The Almighty has obviously said that here are these two indefinable freaks. They came in together, they should go out together. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. But before I go, I want to tell you something from my heart. In this past year, since my 70th birthday, I have received hundreds of letters from all conditions of people, men, women, children, and in them there is a note of thanks and congratulations and praise. But above all, and better than all, there's a note of affection. Oh, praise is well, congratulations is well, but affection, well, that is the last and final and truly greatest gift and a reward for any man to receive, whether for character or achievement. And I'm very proud to have received that reward. Many a year ago, I got an incident from Dana's 2 years before the mast, and it goes like this. Seems there was this self-important little skipper of a coasting sloop in the dried apple and kitchen furniture trade, and he had the habit of hailing every ship that came in sight. Now, he did it to hear himself talk and air his small grandeur. Well, one day, stately Indiaman came in sight with course on course of canvas, decks and yards swarming with sailors, a hull burdened to the plimsoll line with the rich freightage of precious spices, ladening the breezes with gracious and mysterious odors of the Orient. Oh, it was a magnificent spectacle. Well, little skipper, he popped up into the shrouds and squeaked at a hail, "Ship ahoy! What ship is that? And whence? And whither?" And then The reply came back in the deep and thunderous bass, in the speaking trumpet, "The Begum of Bengal! 142 days out from Canton, homeward bound. What ship is that?" Well, that just about squashed that poor creature's vanity flat. He squeaked back most humbly, "Only the Mary Ann, 14 hours out from Boston, bound for Ketry Point, with nothing in particular." Oh, what an eloquent word that "only" is, to sound the depths of his humbleness. Well then, that is exactly my case. In 1 hour out of the 24, and not more, when I sit and reflect in the night with the echoes of your praise ringing in my ears, why then, it is then that I am meek. It is then that I am perfectly humble. And it is at that time that I am only the Mary Ann, 14 hours out, laden with vegetables and tinware. But for the remaining 23 hours, when my vain self-complacency rides high on the firm crest of your approval, why then I am the stately Indiaman, plowing the seas under a cloud of canvas and laden with the kindest words that's been vouchsafed to any wandering alien on this planet. And it is then that I am the Begum of Bengal. 70 years out, homeward bound. Thank you, and good night.